Hi there, I haven't made a video in a while, so I thought I'd give a little update. Yeah, I got my graduation deferred. I have to wait an additional 2 months now to graduate, and it's not my fault. It's because on the placement I was given, there was some strange goings on. Like my mentor on the placement, just I don't know, it was very bizarre. Took a disliking to me, and it was an experience like nothing else. It's like imagine you're trying your best to get on with someone, you're trying everything, and it's not working, and they just seem to hate you. It's like that. Really weird. And I know that's the kind of thing like a narcissist might come out with, and like, oh, it's them, it's not me, but it really wasn't me. Like, like I know that sounds crazy, but I felt I was being genuine, open, honest. I was having hearts to hearts. I was trying my damnedest, but there was something not right. There was something weird going on there. And ultimately, the university had my back and said, well, it does sound like a strange scenario. Like they were telling lie. Like I don't know if it was a big misunderstanding, but there was a lie going around. And I think this is where it comes. This is it's important when you're out, you know, you're talking to people in a professional setting, like Jordan Peterson basically is the internet right now, so it's hard to get round about an idea he hasn't spoken about. So to be honest with you, like I've listened to a lot of apologists. This channel began as a Christian apologetic channel, and a lot of what Jordan Peterson says has been touched on before by people like John Lennox, Ravi Zacharias, William Lane Craig, a lot of these people, but he just has a bit. Jordan Peterson has a better way of saying it. He says it better, which is difficult. If you listen to some old Zacharias stuff, that's really deep and profound and awe-inspiring. But Peterson says it better in a way that's more palatable and in a spirit that's more palatable as well. But this idea of communicating your points clearly, to articulate your points with the most, gosh, here we go, getting myself tongue tied. I don't do English language here. I try my best to parallel, run. It's happening. It's already happening. Why did I do it? Why did I put the camera on? Anyways, so you got to try and come across as clearly as possible, and watch what you say. And that's what I was doing with this person. I was being very precise in my language because I needed it to be that way. Because if I said something out of line, I knew that she would take that and seize upon it and capitalize on it and try and milk it into being something it wasn't. Very bizarre scenario. Anyways, I've got to wait. So, in the meantime, I've been doing a little online stuff. Let's get to some thoughts that have been shared and some current events and all the rest of it. One of the big ones that's kind of taking the internet by storm right now is this Mexican immigration thing in America, with the children in the cages. And I have to admit, that is horrible optics. That is horrible optics. Like, putting them in cages. Now, I know the infrastructure was probably there, and this is all by the books and everything, but still. That is never going to play well. Put them in a creche, put some toys up, take the cages away where it's just children. To say nothing else about it, that's the only thing I want to say is it looks terrible. It looks terrible. And I'm not some left wing person. I'm just thinking, oh god damn it, that's not a good way to go. Um, saw this meme online. It was getting a lot of likes. It says, "When a nice guy loses patience, the devil shudders." The devil shudders? No, he doesn't. The devil smiles a big hearty grin when the nice guy loses patience. First of all, I don't think there's such a thing as a nice guy. You often hear in these school massacres that the perpetrator was someone of a rather subdued and mellow attitude. Oh, he never harmed anyone. He never really spoke that much. Yeah, that's right. Because of the pride of his youth, he was um, too inside his own head, unwilling to come forward and discuss his problems, and unwilling to come outside of his social barriers, and so he built up a murderous rage and wreaked vengeance upon the earth. That's not the nice guy losing patience and the devil shuddering. That's just that's just completely orchestrated by evil. That's the manifestation of evil in the world. It's when you go to that negative place, it's it comes from pride, I think, especially in these youthful. That's to speak disparagingly. There's a more sensitive way to broach the issue, but to speak disparagingly, I would call the person um, cowardly, and immature. I wouldn't romanticize it with a nice graphic of a guy with a big black hat with a creepy smile under it with the rainfall. This is what the picture looks like in the meme with the little letters, spelling it out in a nice fancy font. When the nice guy loses his patience, the devil shudders. It's like, no, he really doesn't. He doesn't. I think these behaviours and attitudes are quite common. Like I was a shy, keeping myself to myself kind of person, and there comes times where you get frustrated being like that. But it's almost like being born again. You need to continue to grow and to push through barriers. That's a horrible image, but you gotta continue to keep moving forward. And when you stall and you fall into that darkness and you lend your ear to the devil, that's when everything goes to shit. That's when all these wicked, cruel, twisted ideas begin to work their way into your head like a cancer. This negative, obsessive pattern wreaks its way in. And the only way to get out of it is to go past your comfort zones. And that's why I'm part of this psychology group on Facebook. Psychology Learners, it's called. My goodness, it's not what you think. It's lots of people who ask bizarre questions. One of the most recent questions was, it's a lot of people from Central Asia, like Central Asia. Does that make sense? Is that what I mean? I'll say Pakistan and India. People there are asking questions. Here's one. What does it mean your hips don't lie? And I saw that and I laughed to myself. I said, why is this on this page? Who's the moderator? Who's the moderator? But I decided I would answer it. What does it mean these hips don't lie? What is it the hips are not lying about? And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the hips are not lying about something. You know what I'm saying? What they're saying is, I'm a mature lady, and I know how to make some rhythmic motions with my lower hemisphere. And if you get any ideas, well, I ain't lying. I ain't lying. So that's what I told him. I gave him the insight, and I think he grew from that experience. I think he's learning. He's learning. Yeah. The hips don't lie. The statement is listened in several English songs. Can anybody tell hoy and why hips don't lie? And then he said to me to give an example, and I said, my friend, you do not want me to give you an example, but I'll describe it for you. I'll describe it. Okay. There's another video here on schizophrenia. Now, I'm reading this book right now by Ian McGilchrist, which is called The Master and the Emissary. And in it, he speaks about the two hemispheres of the brain. Now, he doesn't want to overgeneralize and say, well, one hemisphere does that and the next hemisphere does this, because they both are integral to any one function. They both work, but one of them has a competency of its own, another one has a competency of its own, and they pull together, but they have their own strengths in a sense. And he thinks that the right side is the master, so to speak. So the master and the emissary comes from a story by Nietzsche, where he describes the master who sends out his emissary, and his emissary gets all these cunning plans to usurp him, and then, he sees that the master's goodness as weakness, and so he takes over, and then everything goes to crap, and hey-ho. And that's quite an archetypical story. So he thinks that the left side of the human brain is taking over too much, and he thinks that the structure of the brain is important. How the brain has evolved is important, and how it works out in the world and how it affects things. It's all interconnected, and so he explores the structures of the brain and the relationship between the two sides of the brain. It's probably more technical language. He's talking about lateralization and all that. I don't know everything about it, but it's a good read. But He's also an expert in schizophrenia, and there was a video here suggesting that schizophrenia is genetically um, just what's the word? It's basically all genetics, and if you have this misfiring in your brain, if your brain's structured in such a way, because apparently they did these scans, and the people with this schizophrenic diagnosis, their brain showed up in a scan in a certain way. But the thing about that to me is, well, the brain is notoriously plastic. It's one of the most plastic organs in the brain, which means it changes. Your brain structure literally changes when you learn something new, when you adapt your behavior in some way. The way your brain looks will change in a scan over time. Um, so I was a little bit like, I don't know if that's really true. I mean, sure, there might be certain genetic predispositions, but I really believe that environment is a strong factor in the manifestation of mental illness. You know, if you're exposed to an environment that just really wreaks havoc on you, like limits your whatever it is that you need to be healthy, then I think you're gonna suffer with problems. And that's something I have to check myself with as well, because I can get too insular and I can become a bit stagnant. And I know when I do that, I go to a bad place, and then I just fall into habits of not wanting to go out and stuff. And I don't like it because it doesn't really suit me so much. So I always try and like push myself out. Now let's go back to my hips don't lie. There was a girl in my course, and I don't know, I added her. Why did I add her? I don't know. I just added her because I like, I was adding people on Facebook. Anyway, she added me on Instagram, and I met her at this big function. I was in my kilt and everything. It was just for the course. I didn't rate her. I wasn't looking for a gal, but she had this picture on Instagram, and I thought, ooh, those hips are not deceitful. That's what I thought. So I said to myself, well, I'm going to ask her out. And that doesn't come from a seedy, dark place. It's like, here's the most attractive girl that I can see right now. I won't say the most attractive girl, right? Here's an attractive girl. I'm going to ask her out. And I think that's a healthy exercise, and that's what I would suggest people do that. Young single guys, I think they should try. Don't be creepy. Don't be overbearing. Just go outside your comfort zone, because men are terrified of women. Lots of them are intimidated, and I recognise that in myself. I was always very shy and timid, and it's only recently. Now I've studied subjects that are exclusively like majority women, and what can I say? I had game. Okay, I had a plan. No, it wasn't like that. But no, I think I've really come into my own recently, and I'm a lot more confident and a lot more charming and a lot more attractive as a result of this cumulative experience of immersing myself in these social situations that are just majority female. So I decided to ask her out, and it got to a point, and then it kind of stalled, and I'm happy just to leave it now and let it mellow. If she wants to get back to me, she can. But I'm proud of myself for taking that jump, and I would advise any young men just to try that. If any women are watching this, you're intimidating. You are an intimidating race. um, but yeah, I don't know about that one with the schizophrenia scans. There must be something about it though, about these minds that can go a little bit haywire. They're still present in the day to day, and I think they are because that interesting alignment of neurons and everything is necessary for innovative thought. You'll hear this said often online, that brilliant thinkers often have some kind of mental illness or obscure mental, I don't know, diagnosis. I don't know if there's any truth to that. I think we're all on a spectrum, aren't we? This is what a healthy brain looks like under a CT scan or a MRI. I don't think there is, an atypical mind. Well, there must be within reason, but there's going to be disparity. Now, I saw a study recently about the male and female brain thing, and when you correct for size and everything, there really is no such thing as a male and female brain. There's like slight variations you can look for, but they kind of disappear when you correct for height and all the rest of it. Solipsism and consciousness. How did consciousness come into being? As it were, frontal lobes and cortexes. I haven't committed a lot of it to memory, but obviously, the brain's kind of grown we have our like brainstem and the things here, and then like we've just continued to grow and overdevelop where other animals haven't. And some people think that consciousness is either mediated through the brain or generated within it. And this would be the difference between the idealist, who believe like consciousness is fundamental, and the materialist, who would thinks matter is all there is. And obviously, the one who thinks that the brain mediates consciousness is the one who's the idealist. And they would suggest that the all this mass that's in our skulls, all these folds and connections, and they say there's more the interconnectedness of the brain. There's more connections going on in here than there are like atoms in the universe. I think that's a quote. That's astronomical. That sounds a little bit far fetched, but I'm pretty sure I read it in that book. And people believe, well, could this be where consciousness came from, and maybe you could get a material explanation from that. But I don't know, because it comes down to some really tough fundamental questions, like what we're looking for, and if you do describe the biology and chemistry behind it, are you describing the full thing or just the mechanism through which something a bit more obscure is being channeled or manifest in here? Big questions. You're not going to get all the answers on this video if that's what you're thinking. I read something recently again. It was talking about the meaning of life. The meaning of life. Does religion give us a response to it? And I read this article that said, well, not really. You can't trust religion. You can't trust it. And this was coming from some philosopher. And I thought to myself, this doesn't really sound like it's coming from some amazing scholar. I said that it stings of anti-theism. The fact that religious stories can be understood allegorically isn't some concocted conceit to make religion more palatable. I think many religious people understand the scriptures to be old stories that communicate certain profound truths. I'm a Christian, and I don't think it's important whether or not Jesus physically rose from the dead. It's the question, what does that mean, that's so wonderful? The depth of reflection, introspection, and self-discovery is unavailable to the nihilist. I was making a kind of contrast here. And I think that's a self-inflicted harm born of pride. By pride, I mean that immature posturing that thinks renouncing religion is akin to winning the Nobel Prize for being amazingly clever. It's like some kind of teenage rebellion, wearing a leather jacket and smoking a cigarette outside a class. I'm not impressed by the lazy adoption of the most accessible ideas permeating the social milieu. That was my wee whoosh back at atheism. And I don't mean to disparage atheists completely. I think atheists can be wonderfully open-minded and critically reflective, more so than certain religious people who have those familial and emotional ties to doctrine and dogma that's really hindered their ability to have that objective reflection upon what they believe. Is the glass half full or half empty? I think it's half full. Nobody asks, can I get a half empty glass of Coke and wine? Nobody has that. That's not a real cup. Jack Daniels and Coke. I've been to a pub before. When have I ever ordered Coke and wine? I don't know. Would that work? I've probably drank that before. I'll put anything. I was going to say I'll put anything inside me. I don't want to say that on YouTube. Then I got to this guy here who said he was going to kill himself at 40. He's on this science, philosophy and psychology discussion group. I thought to myself, why are you doing that? I said to him, why are you telling us you're going to kill yourself at 40? That's a bit morbid. And he says, I'm not depressed or anything. He says, I just feel like I've done everything I want to experience and I'm going to check out at 40. Can I do that on his own terms kind of thing? And I said, well, where did this idea come from? He says, well, I made this idea. I came to this conclusion when I was in my 20s. And I said, well, look, I'm going to be a bit of a dick here. And I told him, grow up. I said, you set that deadline when you were young. And what did I say exactly? I said, you set a deadline as a young man, and no doubt you've lived out the psyche of that young man. I don't doubt he's had enough, but there is more to you than that one persona. Maybe you'd be an excellent father, or a better one, or a missionary, or something you'd never consider from the young dude perspective. And then I said, I'm speaking from the world here. You could have talents, and you've got a responsibility to use them to make the world better. You're focused on yourself. Now focus on us. Kill yourself by becoming someone new. Manifest a new selfless persona. Maybe you'll die in the process, but that's better uh, than just checking out. So I thought that would be something to kind of keep him, keep him alive. We kind of spoke back and forth, and he kind of seems to have made his mind up there. But we'll see. I can't make it my responsibility to coach people back from the brink. Or maybe I can, and I did try. It did catch my attention. So whenever Sam Harris is brought into a conversation, the question of free will comes up, and I was discussing it here in the comments recently. And I said that I believe that you can have both. I said I would advocate scientific determinism to a point, but then there's maybe scenarios in life where you have a choice. Like, just out of random probability, it could happen that a sequence of events all up, like it's all mathematically predetermined until it gets to like maybe chance. That's what I'm saying. Chance is in the system. Chance and a bit of chaos is in the system. It's mathematically coded into scientific determinism, and that finds its point of access into manifestation, expression in the world through the human body, through our agency and autonomy, if we can call it that. That's what we're calling it. So it all comes up to us, and then it's not like we get to completely obliterate the situation. It's not like we get to completely change the scenario, but we get to. Here we go. There's a good quote here that'll maybe crystallise this a bit more. What is this quote? Man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills. That's one quote that doesn't really help me. That's not the quote I was looking for. Where's the other one? There was a good quote in here somewhere. Motives. It was something to do with motives. Here we go. In other words, although an agent may often be free to act according to a motive, the nature of that motive is determined. So I would just look at it as like, I would call it like spheres of influence in my layman's attempt to explain it. So you've got the greater sphere, or your greater bubble, and what you do won't change anything outside that bubble. But what you have a limited sphere inside this bigger sphere, and that's where this window of chance, this little episode of free will happens, and this kind of changes things to an extent. Is that mad? Did I just come up with something mad? No, I didn't. This idea has been discussed for hundreds of years. It was David Hume subscribed to this, of all people, and Thomas Hobbes and the Stoics, and it's called compatibilism, and it says that there's no logical inconsistency between the idea of there being larger determined systems within which minor free will can exist. And we all live as if there is free will, because otherwise you wouldn't have the criminal justice system as it stands, because no one would be ultimately responsible for what they do. So it just, not only does it feel right, but I think, well, is that the best you can do, is say that it feels right? It's a very weak argument, and yet it sounds like the strongest one. It feels right, but there's no undergirding of intellectual rigour there. Not that I'm saying there's none. I feel like my little rant beforehand about the systems and all the things and it coded into the system, all that stuff, like scoop it back a minute, all that stuff I said before, I just undermined my argument with making a little pause and reflection. All that stuff, that makes it happen. But look, smarter guys than me have discussed it. As I say, Thomas Aquinas, David Hume, Hobbes, they're all there. Of course there's criticisms. Some people call it soft determinism and a quagmire of invasion of our free will, but I don't know. Doesn't it undermine the whole enterprise of rational thought? This is one of the criticisms I would give in response to determinism, because none of what we're think. But then you could say that it's not necessary. It's not necessarily illogical. Our thoughts are not necessarily illogical. It could be the consequence of determinism that logical thought happens because systems are organized in, well, there is organization and there is a certain finesse and economy to the coding, if you will. But then, I don't know. It kind of then when you start talking about coding and stuff, you kind of get into like you're talking then about the digital physics, and then digital physics pretty much posits God, because you need God, you need idealism then as your ontology, which undermines the whole atheistic attempt at explaining our existence. So I've talked about hips don't lie. Yeah. So the last thing is basically I'm going to talk about is tomorrow. I'm meeting with someone from a course, a really wonderful girl that I've really grown to really admire. She's the funniest person ever. Like, I've really enjoyed this course because it's opened me up to a whole new world of people. I come from a little quiet town in the west coast of Scotland, but I've been meeting a lot of people from the east coast. There's often a said to be a east and west coast rivalry between Glasgow and Edinburgh. Glasgow is more working class, salt of the earth, and Edinburgh, they're seen as rich and up their own arse and all this. So there's a friendly rivalry there. Anyway, they're better people in Edinburgh. They're better. No, it's not true. It's not true. People say the opposite coming either way. You know what I mean? Oh, you're a lot better. Every time I meet someone from a different country, they always say, you Scots are wonderful people. I'm like, are we? Isn't it just the case that you appreciate friendliness more when you're in a foreign land, and so then you're more willing to be feeling gracious? Maybe not, because they did say there was a difference even within Britain. Of course, London's the comparison. London's not very friendly, apparently. I don't know if I've experienced that. I don't expect much from people. I'm not testing them. You know what I mean? I just do my own thing when I visit places. I ain't gonna judge you. Anyways, this wonderful, wonderful person, like striking as well, beautiful. She's coming down, and we're going to see a relative of hers, a vulnerable relative. And she told me that it's not something she's done. She's never really introduced anyone to this relative, and yet the circumstances are so that I'm going to meet them. And it makes me wonder about the relationship I have with this person, because this individual that's coming over, man, I'm being so evasive about exposing who they are. Gosh, we've had a romantic encounter. It wasn't complete passion to the wind. It was just, it was there, there was kissing, there was, intimateness, but not hips don't lie kind of stuff, none of that yet. But no, I just find this is going to be quite wonderful, so I don't know what to make of it, and it kind of makes me think like I'm gonna really admire her when I see her in this situation tomorrow, and the fact that she's making me a part of it as well. I really see that as a strong bonding thing. And we've never really spoken in a lot of detail about how we'd see each other in our relationship. We've kind of said, oh, we crossed the line there when we got a bit too romantic, and we dialed it back, because things can get complicated when friends take it further. But I really feel like I could come out of this like really strongly falling for her, because I'm seeing her so vulnerable and being so strong. This is someone who's faced a lot of tragedy recently, and the strength of her character and how beautiful I find her is really a conundrum for me. And I'm getting to a point now where I'm wanting to take relationships a bit more seriously as well, and begin to think about settling down and all that. Gosh, my next video I'll be telling you how I proposed. I don't know, but we'll see how it goes, eh? My advice would be, though, to anybody watching, is just, if you have the opportunity to get yourself in situations like this, do it. Throw yourself into them. Like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, I would have never have done anything like this. I'm 30 this year. I would have been way too shy even 10 years ago, and I'm a grown-ass man 10 years ago. I'm 20 years old. but I would have been way too shy to go about this, you know. And the only way you grow up really is through experience. If I just, you know, didn't allow myself to feel a bit uncomfortable from time to time, then I might be one of these people sitting there resenting my life, hating everything. Don't become like that. Never become bitter. Put yourself out there, and these weird, wacky scenarios will happen to you. You might not live through them. You know, there's a certain element of risk involved in life, but it's very much worthwhile, and I would recommend that because the morbidity rates of being miserable for your existence, those are not much better. So just, you know, go for it. Really, go for it, and you know, bless you, bless you. Okay, God bless you. I was gonna say there might be atheists watching, so I'll go with bless you. Then I thought, no, I'm not gonna tone it down. I'm not gonna tone it down. May the Lord Jesus Christ and everything, just all that, just coming at you. Bless you. That's something as well. You know, my local church is on its last legs, and there's not much I can do about it. I've got no money to support them, and I really think that the churches have really inflicted this wound upon themselves by just petering out into irrelevancy, you know. And I think they could do more, but they're unwilling to let go of the reins. They're really driving it into the earth, and I would have been happy to put my energy into that church. I really would have, but I just don't feel it's there. And maybe there's more I could have done to fight for it, but again, I would be alone. There's no one of my generation that attends church anymore. And quite frankly, I don't know if it's worth... Seriously, the building should come second. It's a beautiful building. It's a beautiful historic building. It's 3 times older than the USA. But I don't really see the point in the building. The mission is more important than the building. And quite frankly, I don't know what the mission is over there. So I'm sorry that it's going down, but, you know, that's just a building. And I feel like, you know, that religious heritage, we all live in its wake, every one of us. We take it for granted, but the culture that we've inherited didn't just plop into existence and circumnavigate and clinically sterilise itself from any involvement with the religion. No, we all walk on the shoulders of great people, many of whom had that spiritual aspect to their lives, and that spiritual aspect shouldn't be denied. So, God bless. Take care.